Hi, everybody. I was saying to my mom that I haven't done a story in a long time, so she thought it would be a good idea if I read our annual Halloween story, Who Took My Hairy Toe? Before we start the story, my mom wanted me to remind you that this is a made-up story. It's a story that's been passed down from generation to generation, and it started not on paper, not written down, but spoken by grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles to their children so they would understand a lesson. It reminds me of the parables that Jesus would tell. He would tell stories so that we would understand rules and ways to live, like how to be a good neighbor. So, while you listen to this story, try to figure out what the lesson is and see if it helps you make good decisions. On All Hallows Eve, when the wind is whipping through the gap and the trees are scratching at the sky, the folks around here say you can hear Old Tar Pockets screaming. Old Tar Pockets was not his real name. That has long been forgotten. Some say he was just an old man living up the holler, away from the other folks. But they also say he was greedy, even that it wasn't safe to say howdy to him without him taking a good hold of your hat. He better think twice before he takes my hat. He met his undoing one Halloween. You see, he was prospecting for something a little handy by his neighbor's barn while his neighbor was tarring the roof. By the barn sat an open bucket of warmed-up tar. I'd like to get some of that tar, he thought. Might come in right handy sometime. Well, the old man looked around but couldn't find anything to put it in. So when the neighbor wasn't looking, he dipped a stick full of that soft, warm tar out of the bucket and plopped it right into his coat pocket. That's how he got his name, Old Tar Pockets. Then he spied a few scraggly sweet potato plants, the last of the season, in his neighbor's garden. So Old Tar Pockets began to dig. And you know what happened? He dug up a hairy toe. It was big and covered in coarse brown fur with a long yellow toenail curving over the end. Gross! Well, the old man wasn't sure what to do with it, but he did hold with an old saying, finders keepers. So he took that toe and stuffed it into his pocket. Old Tar Pockets carried home those stolen golden sweets and cooked himself up a mess of greens and taters for supper. Then he remembered he had that toe. He reached into his pocket, but couldn't pull it out. You see, the tar had cooled down and hardened up a bit, and the toe was stuck fast. In fact, the old man couldn't get his own hand out. His hand was stuck to the tar on the toe, and the toe was stuck to the tar in the pocket. He was stuck. Old Tar Pockets decided to get ready for bed. Tomorrow, when the sun comes up, he'd warm up his jacket and soften up the tar and pull everything out, as slick as you please. But just then, the wind began to rise and whistle around the windows. Outside, the trees began to jerk about and claw at the sky. And Old Tar Pockets heard a question, a voice rising in the wind. It hissed about the corners of the house, and it asked,
"Who took my hairy toe?"
Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe?
Who stole my hairy toe?
Who stole my hairy toe?
The old man opened the door and stared out into the dark woods beyond the house. Ah, just my imagination, he thought, and he turned to shut the door. Then he heard it again, louder and closer. Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Quickly, he closed and barred the door with his free hand. He latched the window and pulled the curtains. It was dark in the little house. Still, the wind came through the chinks in the wall. He could hear the question again and again and again, louder and coming closer. Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe?
Old Tar Pockets raked out the fire and stopped up the chimney with rags. Nothing was getting inside tonight, he thought. But he heard the voice again, this time from just outside the door. Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Standing wild-eyed in the center of the room, the old man heard scratching at the latch, and the clacking of the claws began to draw down on the wood door.
Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Old Tar Pockets jumped into bed and yanked the quilt over his head, but he could still hear the question, first at one window, then at another.
Who stole my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe? Who stole my hairy toe?
Suddenly, a mountain-bending shriek of wind blew against the old house with such force that the door cracked and lay in two pieces, gaping open. Just as quickly, the wind died down. In the hush of that followed, the old man could hear his own heart beating, and he could hear the thump, scritch, thump, scrape of the heavy feet approaching his bed in the dark.
Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe?
Who took my hairy toe? Who took my hairy toe?
Old Tar Pockets couldn't take it any longer. He sat up in bed and stared at the darkest darkness he had ever known. Two fiery red eyes stared back. Then he smelt the foul breath and felt the sharp claws as the beast reached toward him. The old man flicked back those covers with his one free hand and cried, "Here it is! Here it is! I've got it! Take it!" The great beast moaned. It had found its hairy toe, but the toe was stuck in old Tar Pocket's pocket. With a shriek, the great red-eyed beast grabbed the old man and, tucking him under his arm, ran out of the house and into the October night. Now, when ghosts and goblins haunt the hills and the wind is rising in the treetops, they say you can hear the shrieks of the angry beast. If you listen carefully, you can hear the old man screams too, as the beast and the man wander the valleys and ridges of the mountains together. The kindly folk here say, "Pay no never mind to that. It's just old Tar Pocket's getting his due." I say, just as long as what's in your pocket belongs to you, I wouldn't worry about it.